Hey folks, how you doing? It's Jeremy Kirkland. You're listening to Blammo. Oh man, new episode. Hello fall, by the way. Hello Tony Sylvester. I mean, I'm just gonna jump in. Yo, it's freaking Tony Sylvester on the pod. What a great day. Even in just a crazy time, there's still some great days. I'm recording this in a Shetland sweater right now. That's right. I made the switch to the fall wardrobe. Do you know what I'm talking about? I know a few of you are like, oh yeah, I kind of did too. You know, you got some box or some Rubbermaid container, if you're me, where like a bunch of sweaters are in there with like a business card size piece of cedar. And you're like, yeah, that'll do it. We're good now. No issues, right? And you open it up and you look at all these sweaters and you put it on, and of course it doesn't fit. And you're like, oh man, these sweaters must have shrunk. And then you're like, no. We'll kind of get a little side profile of you. I don't know. It might be happening. It might not be, but it's all right. You know, as I'm recording this too, this is a thing. Ever since I've been a parent, it's so great. I just love being a dad. It's such a wonderful feeling. But damn it, man. I'm trying to record and I don't know what the hell's going on upstairs. They're yelling about something. They played a game called Sock Fight where my son just like freaking Nolan Ryan's socks across the room. I don't even know why I'm talking about that. Forget it. It doesn't matter. It's Tony Sylvester. He's on the pod today, and this is, it's funny because I met him well over a decade ago. Great dude, just a phenomenal style, unbelievable taste, and has always been. I think he was a person when I was like, oh man, like if I could look like anyone, and if I could have this kind of level of like, swag before we called it swag, but just like this attitude, this vibe that Tony embodies it. I mean, he totally does. He's a musician, he's a writer, he's a creative director, and he's about to release his book, An Informal Guide to Workwear, Form, Function, and Fashion, with the foreword by none other than Mr. Derek Guy. I mean, look at that. Voltron happening here. But Tony comes on the pod. We discuss the intersection of music and menswear. That famous, like, why is everyone in hardcore bands or why is everyone in menswear? No, understand hardcore. He talks about what led to creating his new book, his brand AWMS, chore coats, berets, much more. It's all in there. Happy fall, y'all. So Tony, how you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm good.
It's been a minute.
I know. I'm very, very excited. I mean, there's a gajillion things to talk about because you're a person I've wanted to talk to pre all this book stuff. Just from like the style side, the brand side. I mean, you have a brand.
Thank you.
Turbo Negro.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you contain multitudes.
Yeah. But somehow they make a full normal person, which is quite nice. They're all the sort of small parts, small people, and then suddenly they build into one giant sort of like Optimus Prime, which is actually just a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny because especially now where I feel like we're at this kind of age where more and more of my friends don't really have a sort of linear career per se.
Yep.
No one's like, oh, I, went to CSM and I studied this and I make this brand and I've stayed at this brand and this is it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like now I feel like most of my friends who are doing the most exciting things are because of the fact that they have existed in so many different industries that they've been able to like pull a perspective and an understanding of what they're in now. Because you're a person who not only understands like fabric and design and history behind it all, but you also know how to like put it together, and then you know how to choose what works for yourself, and create your own sort of aesthetic from that.
I mean, and that's the thing that I think that takes time, and honestly, I don't feel like I had that. How you can judge it, I think, is if you see a picture of yourself from 18 months ago and you go, oh my God. But then you see a picture of yourself from 18 months ago and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah. And that probably only happened to me 5 or 6 years ago, where I suddenly like, okay, I can see it. So it's just like, when I look back at, I mean, I'm much slimmer, but when I look back to like pre-COVID and I'm like, Oh, okay. Yeah. I can see where I was going with that. Maybe like 2018. I think it was probably like neutral tones, but then, okay, I tell you what it is. It's about if I'm wearing something very smart, because at the time I was working, I was front facing retail to the general public in a tailor's establishment, which was Timothy Everest at the time. So I was wearing a suit and tie or a jacket and tie every day. But of course, within that, it's like that's maybe not my natural style, shall we say. Mm-hmm. So it was like, where did I work within that? So I found that like the key was somewhere between dressing down slightly something which is formal and then dressing up something which is informal. And for me, there's a sweet spot. And so it's a little bit unexpected. And then also seeing the sort of similarities in the polarity between really, really formal wear and really, really informal wear, and sort of skipping that kind of office work type office clothing that's in the middle. So being able to like avoid that completely and kind of do those two extremes on either side and somehow making them work. So like sweatpants with a tuxedo, that's not what I'm saying, but like that would be the kind of shorthand for what I'm saying, and how do you make those things work? And that's also because I'm 52 years old and I've never worked an office job. I've only ever really worked in the music industry for a very long time. And when I say music industry, that sounds very highfalutin. I worked in the kind of nuts and bolts sort of like of that. The kind of distribution, promotion, marketing, coming from a very kind of DIY perspective and then ending up with that being my job. And I worked in that for like 20 plus years. And then before sort of shifting over into menswear. So I'm very lucky in the fact I've never had to wear anything specific for work.
Yeah.
So that gives you that sense that you can play around a little bit,
Well, let's jump back a sec. So you're from where? London?
London. Yeah, from the suburbs of London. Like nowhere very exciting, but pretty northwest London.
Okay. What's for Londoners? What neighborhood?
I was born in North Harrow, and then pretty much was there all of my childhood, and then started easing further into London, West Hampstead, and then Camden, and then ended up in like Finsbury Park, Stoke Newington for about 25 years, like that area. So yeah, pretty solidly that was it. I grew up in West Africa when I was a really young kid, and I had a little sojourn there for like 4 years. But other than that, I've always been in London, yeah.
What came first? Was it music or clothes?
Very interesting. So clothes comes probably from my dad, and then from looking at stuff myself. My dad was always pretty natty, and he'd been a beatnik, late 50s. He'd gone straight from school to work at like 14. And then went joined the Navy when he was 18. So he was from about 14, 15, he was pretty doing his own thing. And so kind of growing up around him. And then I had two older sisters, 6 and 8 years older. So the kind of the youth culture and the subcultural stuff really came from seeing them and what they were up to and what their friends were up to and who they brought over the house. So I would say probably clothes is first, but they're at that age and at that time, they're so entwined. Entwined. I mean, growing up late 70s, early 80s, it's like what you were listening to defined totally 100% how you dressed and who you hung out with and where you went.
And who are you listening to?
Well, I mean, I was listening to sort of a mix of them. So one sister was like a kind of skinhead. And so she was listening to lots of soul and ska and stuff. And then the other one was a like art school kind of punk goth. So on one hand, there'd be one room playing like Shriekback and Sunglasses After Dark, and and Theatre of Hate, and then the other room would be sisters spinning, I don't know, Harry J. All Stars or The Jam. So somewhere between it, I was just kind of. But then the first thing that I kind of got into myself was probably electro and hip hop. Sort of early hip hop, more like breakbeaty electro stuff, because that was what was very big when I was about 8 or 9, 10, and then sort of from there on. But I found hardcore at like age 14, and that was kind of me done. In terms of youth culture, I was like, okay, this is me now. Which is funny because obviously, but not because that's all I listen to or all others do. It's obviously not, but it's more like that kind of, that's then where you find you're like, okay, this is where I'm comfortable. This is the way I view the world now through this prism. So yeah, so that was, and I think most people who get into hardcore feel the same. It's kind of that point where they connect with the world, they connect with through that prism.
Yeah, there's always a like menswear hardcore connection.
Weird.
It's super weird, but I mean, I've asked other people about it, and I've tried to like thread the needle. But like, I don't know, why do you think there's just this strong connection between hardcore and menswear?
I think there's two reasons. I think one of them is that they're employable, and I think they're employable because they were working on their own projects from when they were 14 or 15 years old, putting out records, putting bands on, having people stay at their house, running a mail order, whatever it is. It's just like they're for the most part, capable people who are doing demonstrable things in the real world at a very early age, way younger than I think any other subculture. I think there's that kind of thing, but like by the time you're 18 or 19, you're sort of burnt out on it because you've been so active and doing so much since you're a teenager. So I think that's number one. So I think if you're looking at like small businesses, that instantly people who are like, they have a can, I can do that. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me try and do that. Or how about I do this? So they're very employable, I think, and more likely to end up at a small business, at a kind of, rather than working, more corporate kind of world. And then second thing, I think it's like, it's a fucking cool, They look cool. I'm sorry, good start. And also it was a scene where it was like, the kind of the kid who looked the best and like, was probably, was the hardest dancer, the best dresser, it's really similar, I think, to like the casuals scene, which was sort of what was really happening when I started becoming very interested or started noticing what people wore. So I'm talking like, I was 8 in 1981. So 1982, 8, 9, 10 years old. So that's when you start noticing how people dress, what they're doing. And then, and the casual scene was very much like that. It was kind of like something that existed pretty much away from the media and then had its own very young scene, very young kids. And it was entirely driven by what they were doing and then their one-upmanship and their idea of a pack and a level and then how you stood out within a pack and what you did that was different and what you did the same.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the like most cohesive, and fair answer. Because some people are like, I don't know, man. It's the DIY, and I'm like, yeah.
And that's a big part of it, but I think that's half of it. I think that's why there's so many people who say work for Drake's or work for smaller menswear brands happen to be hardcore kids is because of that work that they did early on, that they can better people who will clean the shop, do the work and stay behind and work a bit harder. Maybe, but I think you're right. I think there's that other aspect, which is more important.
Well, I think also too, this is a weird thing. Like, I don't really know any friends of ours or, that overlap that come from the hardcore scene that are arrogant. You know what I mean? They're all in at their core. I don't know. Yeah. And maybe you're like, I don't know. There's a few ding dongs.
But that's really hard because I think there is a thin line between like, I quite like arrogance in its own way. It has a place.
Well, confidence is different than arrogance.
Okay. Yeah. It's true. It's true. When I think of my favorite sort of bands, my favorite personalities in hardcore, there is an arrogance or a confidence that it comes across, which can be searing and quite, combative, but is also kind of charming part of it as well, so yeah. But I think that comes with the capability, maybe confidence and the capability. Maybe that's the equation. Yeah. Confidence plus capability equals okay. Confidence plus inability equals poo-poo.
Yeah. All right. So back to you're 14.
I'm 14.
You get into hardcore.
I do.
You're figuring out who young Tony is at this time in London.
It's true.
And where do things kind of pop off from there? I mean, and for the record, like you don't have to go through like your entire life story, but for me, it's kind of just connecting some of these things.
I think that when I was really looking for things to sort of to hang my hat on and try and find, and buying records, everything seemed like it wasn't quite happening, like around where I was or the time frame where I was at, the things I was interested in. And then what lined up was this, some people call it second wave, some people call it third wave, but this hardcore wave that came through with Youth Crew, which was which was like straight edge hardcore. Mm-hmm. Specifically from the northeast of America, New York area, and that hitting at that point was like, oh, okay, because it was like not only did I love the music, but also the style was a big part of that because they didn't. It was less punk and had all these other elements. It had Ivy elements, a lot from skinhead, and then a lot from hip hop, and then a lot from punk. So somehow that was just like this beautiful thing that resonated with the things I'd already seen and already liked, and then added something new, and also was exotic because it was foreign and different. And like you weren't going to buy a Champion hooded sweatshirt in England in 1988. It was just, that was an impossibility.
Really?
Yeah, so something as workaday as that was just like an elaborate, chalice of wonder to someone in England.
So how did you get one then?
Oh, going to the States and buying one in 1989, which I still have. It's probably the oldest thing. It's the oldest thing I have from new is my Champion sweatshirt, reverse weave, made in America.
Hell yeah.
So anyway, so it was really that. It was like it was also just the community and then the clothes and the music. So mashed together.
Did you tell your folks like, hey, look, I'm peacing out. I'm going to go work in music? Or were they like, no, you need to go be this person?
No, I even though I was straight edge and looking back on it, pretty good kid. I left home at 16. There was no fight for me to stay.
Oh,
and it was, so I haven't lived with my folks since I was that age. So from that age, I was pretty much working and doing things, looking after myself. So they didn't really have a say in what I was kind of up to. So from then I was just trying things out and out in the world. I tried some college, didn't really stick. And then I pretty much started working for Southern Records, which was like sort of legendary distributor and group of record labels when I was like 20, 21. And I was playing in bands, which is what most people, you played in bands and you were working in a record distributor or a record label, and it's your day job. And then did that till I was probably late 30s. And then once the kind of physical distribution of music and physical, the music industry just, the ass fell out of it. It was like, okay, I have to do something else.
Yeah. And for listeners, the music industry really just kind of shit itself. And even now, I think like I worked at it from like the very tail end of when, you're pressing records and people are losing their mind over it. And then all of a sudden Spotify enters the room, which I'll say, like, on one hand, it's cool in the sense that there's an accessibility thing that came out. Like if you're, when people talk about like that band Geese right now, right? Like everyone's like all obsessed with Geese. And
I only know them as a meme. That's literally my only contact with them. It was like, if the man's posting about Geese, he's not going to look after you is the one I saw. And I thought, that's very funny. Wish I knew who the band were.
Well, that's funny. But like, like Geese is probably one of the first bands that is a product or they had an ingredient of the streaming era of music into which all genres are accessible.
Yeah.
And easily accessible. But if you're coming from like, when I was working in it, and it sounds like when you were working at it, like the industry didn't really know what to do with essentially making all the music free. And especially if you come from for me, I'll just make this more about myself, like the digging through records and the community of talking to people and the highbrow sort of, oh, I'm on this wave, you're on this wave. Like it created and cultivated this part of the music industry that really helped people be confident about what they were into, because like that was a part of your cultural identity. And so when all of a sudden you can get anything and listen to anything and there's no work to get that band, there's no work to understand that, from someone like me, you're like, this is fucked.
I mean, okay, there's a lot, you've hit on a rich theme because there's a lot to talk about there, but like 100%, it was like the people who were really affected was the kind of mid-sized bands in the mid-market. So for someone where I was working, that would have been like Fugazi, Jesus Is a Girls Against Boys. These are kind of bands that would sell 30,000 records. You know what I mean? And so therefore could have a pretty successful, pretty good lifestyle off that, plus touring, plus merch if they wanted to do merch, And it was that, because those are the people that people want to stream. Big independent bands would be people who would be most affected by music becoming free, in inverted commas. And that's the thing to disappear, because obviously at the top level, major labels adapted, changed their business models, shifted into other areas, signing bands for 360 deals so that they could earn from their merchandise and their touring. And then obviously at a small level or whatever, no one was making any money anyway. So you just carried on behaving how you behave. But it was that mid-market that went. And that was somewhere where obviously working for an independent distributor, that's where the money was. You were getting records into stores to sell. And then that overnight, that was like, no, you're not doing that.
It really is. I mean, I'm waiting for somebody's like, Harvard thesis on the erosion of culture from, disrupting the mid-level music scene. But yeah, you're right. Because Fugazi is a perfect example of that, in which if you're selling your own records and you own your masters and you do this and you live your life on the road, you can make pretty decent living.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and because people are like, oh, like people like Radiohead, as much as I love those guys, it never mattered whether or not they were sold on. I mean, they were one of the first bands that just fucking like sold their record for free, essentially.
Well, yeah, and that was always that was the first one that had an effect on people, because it was somehow this like, well, look at this, you can do this model, and it's just like, you can only do this model because a major label has spent millions on you for 5 years or 6 years at this point, so you're in a position to do this. No one else can say, hey, give us what you want for your record. So I always found it a bit,
Yeah, they all had PR.
I was always very cynical about that. I thought it ended up being marketing for its own sake to me.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like a blueprint for how the industry could work.
Correct. I mean, it was the whole concept of In Rainbows was essentially a press it. Phenomenal record.
Yeah.
But, the fact that they also just put it out before they even had physical media printed, is mind-boggling. And anyway,
I've never been a fan anyway.
You're not a Radiohead guy.
Dollarama talk, if you ask me, but that's just me.
Well, I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, yeah.
Anyway, okay, so that's the first point. But then the second point is you're absolutely right, because anyone who is into music was their identity. The whole point is that like you establish yourself on what access you had to what music, how you presented that, and then how you found other people who also had put the effort into finding out about something and going and getting it. And so it's like you would have these hallowed VHSs of performances of bands, that no one else had. And so it wasn't really records, it was also all the rest of the ephemera and all the rest of the stuff. And it really like what you owned was your sort of personality, really.
Yeah.
And then so it's just like, so what does that mean in an age when you can talk about something, and while you're talking about it, you can go online and order it and have it to your house, the item, and then you can be listening to the music, nanoseconds after someone telling you a band name. What does that then mean for culture? You're right. And I'm definitely not saying it's a negative. I'm saying it's entirely different and has changed things, because it's like on one hand, there's no quantifiable difference between Taylor Swift and Turnstile. What is the difference anymore? And that's not a no. Please don't think I'm saying from an access point of view and from a sort of status point of view. What is the difference?
I agree.
But that's not a diss on either of those performers. I'm saying it's just like, okay, well, what is it then? Now you have to think about what is actually different about something. You know what I mean? Because it's not just how you find out about things or how big something is anymore.
Yeah, yeah. But I think in a weird way too, the concept of all this, if you were really, really locked in, you kind of white knuckle your way through this, and you're like, fine, I'm gonna do Bandcamp Fridays, which for listeners is you can buy music from Bandcamp, where a lot of people will sell their own music, and on Fridays, 100% of that money goes directly to the band. And so you can really support them. You can, yes, you had a few little sort of like e-com, little hybrid setups where bands could go and sell their merch or sell and do their stuff. And you could still make that thing. And even now you have some people who are pressing tapes and 7 inches and all sorts of stuff. And you can kind of get back into it, but it requires even more effort to lock in. And do this.
So one of the other things is that the format of choice these days for most people is a vinyl LP. Now, in the economics, when I was doing budgets for bands in the early 2000s and late 90s, a CD cost £1 to press, sold in the store for £10 to £15. Distributor got back 6 or 7 for it. Label got back maybe £4 for it, maybe something like that. So you had £1 to press it, £1 to make it, £1 to promote it, £1 profit. So 1,000 CDs would make £1,000 after you'd done everything. 500 to you, 500 to the band, or whatever. And then the vinyl, well, I mean, whatever. That was just, you pressed 500 of them or 1,000 of them, and they cost a hell of a lot of money, and everyone loved them, and the band got, a certain amount of pressing to sell. But it was like an afterthought. And the actual economics of your record release were done off the CD. So it was really when the CD stopped selling, but that's what threw everything out, because it was just like, you can't do that. You can't use that same model on vinyl, on selling 1,000 pieces of vinyl. You just can't.
Yeah.
Because the cost of them is so close to the retail value, which is why all LPs now are like $30, $40. You know, that's just how much they are. You know, there's no way around it.
Yeah. Well, and also too, where, you know, and I'll add this in the sense that there was like 20 or 30 places that would, you know, press CDs.
Yes.
To LPs.
Two or three that did LPs. Yeah.
Yeah. And even now, I think there's a messed up monopoly. It's like you have RTI and United. I think Jack White is a large majority owner in, what is it, RTI now, which is, I mean, so there's only a few places to press vinyl. Yep. And I remember working at Beggars and Adele, like we had Adele everywhere but the US.
Yeah.
And Adele wanted to press her, you know, she wanted to press it on vinyl. And it completely fucked the entire release calendar of all of these bands, including bands that were on Beggars, because of the fact that like Adele's pressing vinyl and it's going to get sold at Target. Yeah, and she's going to sell millions of records.
And I remember that. I remember Amy Whitehouse and Adele records being like, okay, guys, everything's on hold.
Yep.
ISIS aren't getting their vinyl on time because of Adele.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, you know,
that was exactly what it was. Yeah. Is that 100%?
Okay, hey, I got a little secret. Feel free to even turn the volume up for a second. I'm into loafers, folks. I like a little slippy slide for my dress shoes. I'll throw on a pair when I want to dress up some denim or when I want to dress down a suit. But my go-to loafers are from Grant Stone. Family-owned and operated, Grant Stone are usually known for their incredible Goodyear welted boots. The diesel boot is a personal favorite of mine. But they're Goodyear welted because they're easy to replace, and they make footwear that will last a lifetime. But for me, my Grant Stones are my loafies. This spring, I've been wearing their classic horsebit loafers. And while yes, Grant Stone is an e-com company, Grant Stone's services are the best I've ever had. It was easy. You can email their staff. You can let them know what your size is because you're like, I don't know, am I this size? Am I this size? Reach out to them and they will get you sorted in whatever you're looking for. Plus, they make their footwear in a variety of widths, so you can even get your big hobbit feet fitting nice and comfy. So grab a pair and enjoy the fact that you bought shoes that will last for ages with their Goodyear welted construction, incredible leathers, and a footbed that molds nice to your foot. You can even repair these shoes years later when you need them, so you can wear big fits for years. Grant Stone has it all. So visit grantstoneshoes.com to learn more. That's grantstoneshoes.com. Oh, what's my next pair? Espresso suede penny loafers from Grant Stone. But anyway, I mean, that creates, I think, such an amazing subculture of like, you know, refinement and what you, and when I say refinement in that, like you are very selective about your identity because your identity is rooted in music, your identity is rooted in these subcultures. And then also kind of bubbling up in between this time was you had like this where it's okay to talk about menswear all of a sudden, you know, where it's, you have Tumblr, you have Blogspot, you have all these like little outlets of pre-Instagram social media. And because of the like democratization, for lack of a better term, of the internet, it was like you and Ethan Newton. And it was like really cool style that was not this kind of like pretty boy, whatever looking, my hair's parted this way sort of Ralph Lauren. It was like actual authentic badass like style. And I think you and Ethan were like in the you know, leading the whole charge on that.
Thank you. That's a lovely thing to say. I mean, so to put it into context, it was around, like I say, like 2008, 2009, where it was like, wow, this is really bad working in physical distribution. No one's happy. Shops aren't happy. Bands aren't happy. Labels aren't happy. Distributors aren't happy. This is awful. And at the same time, one guy who I credit a lot for things for influence was a guy called Ben Reardon, who at the time had been editor at ID. And then he went over to GQ Style. And he said, I want to do a feature on you. And I'd already written quite a lot about music. I was publicist and press officer and had been writing one sheets for like 20 years and then had started doing reviews and was writing for like Vice or like NME and a few places here and there. And he was like, we want to do a feature on you. And I said, well, why don't I write for you instead? So that would have been 2009, 2010. I started at GQ Style So I was kind of 1 foot in each camp then. And then that's the thing that kind of like, now it's given me this kind of way out into something a little more interesting to do.
Well, and from my perspective too, I'll add your participation in those legitimized them further because you had real life experience versus like, oh, I found my dad's old shirt and it's kind of cool and I watched a Steve McQueen movie. It's like, no, like you actually lived and understood the roots of this stuff and you had your own personal style. I just want to clarify for the record here, but
I mean, to me, it was more like, wow, I want to write about something. I want to get into the nitty gritty. So I don't think there's I've always written like that. And that also comes from when you're a commercial writer. So then basically from then, that's what I did. I wrote copy, and I've worked for lots of different people and have kind of, and at small companies, you end up doing retail plus whatever marketing and promo stuff that needs doing. So I ended up kind of like story writing and doing marketing. And then, but it's so similar to writing. So this is going to segue into the book nicely, which is why I've set it up. But and then and that's what happens. But I still remember the first time that Drake's, for example, turned around and said, "Hey, would you write for us and we do some stuff?" And I remember thinking, "What? Okay." It just felt like obviously it was a company I really admired and I really loved their product and was a avid buyer of their product. But the idea that they would be interested in my worldview and my take on what they were doing was mind blowing. You know what I mean?
Seriously?
Yeah, totally. Because I didn't feel like I was kind of, I
think everyone else did.
Okay, thank you. But I didn't. And then, but also like I'd experienced that before with like trying to write about certain brands at magazines like Man About Town or GQ Style, where it was like, they weren't that, there is a very big brand who I will not mention, where we wanted to write about how their appeal was so vast that you could get it, you had everything from kind of like lesbian kind of hip hop scene through to like hardcore kids, through to like the kind of Black Ivy sort of lineage and all these things. And look what a great diverse like audience you have. And yet it's one brand. And how does that work? And they were like, this is amazing. 7 layers of management until it was like, absolutely no way. These are not the people we want wearing our clothes. And it was just like, there you go. So I was kind of used to it still feeling like I was like outside of that purview a little bit. And also I think that goes back to that tradition of like British kids wearing clothes that they maybe sort of shouldn't be. And I think that was a big thing of like the casual movement was like you were like co-opting a lot of stuff that was either like this like expensive sportswear from Europe or old man's shooting clothes and hunting clothes, and everything was kind of coming through. And so there was like, I'm definitely not saying it was ironic, but there was a sort of a slight knowing distance from it and an acknowledgement that you weren't quite in the right place, so that you weren't. So that was kind of part of the fun, that you were kind of doing this a little bit cheekily.
Right.
And so it's just like, so a lot of that, especially I think if you're wearing the clothes of an aristocrat or a rich guy, for me, it's always been that kind of like, there's a slightly knowing sort of like twinkle in the eye towards it. And then it's quite funny because then you meet other people and you go, oh no, they mean it seriously. They actually are rich guys. Okay, cool.
Yeah. People like, oh, they do. Yeah.
I thought they were in on a joke. No.
Yeah. It's like, no, this is my stocking jacket. And you're like, oh, shit.
I'm well out of my depth here. So yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that's it. And then I've gone on to, write for work with lots of different brands, Turnbull Asser, Globe-trotter. Obviously, I've written Permanent Style for like a few times, and those guys, and yeah. And that's sort of how it led on to talking to a publisher about working on a book. So,
I mean, I'm aware of what this is, but for listeners, what is this book?
It's called An Informal Guide to Workwear. And it was really an idea of like, I went in with an idea to them about something that would, it's my first experience with a publisher. And I was very green about how they work. So I kind of went in going, hey, I'd really like to write the subject. And they were like, we're not interested in that subject, but we're interested in you. And I was like, whoa, okay. So it's like, so then you together come up with an idea of what fulfills your needs and theirs together. And it's like, okay, that's cool. And then the funny thing is that unlike any other field I've ever worked in, all the selling is done and all the kind of like advanced work is done before the thing even exists, because it's not like there's music to play or demos that you can show, or there's a sample that can be jacket, which can be shown to clients. You basically that's the reason why it works, because they then go into their meeting and go, we got this guy, this is the subject, this is what he's done. Are you in? And so it's like the thing doesn't exist, and then you've got to go and write it. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. So I found, so it's been really interesting for me, like working with a publisher, because I've never, it's all entirely new to me, you know?
Yeah, because I think too, the other thing that was going on that, you know, I'll say is you were and are a writer, but also to other people, you're just like a cool guy, you know, or to even other people, like you're the front man of a band who goes on tour. And so, you know, to like tie back to the beginning, the fact that you have a really strong understanding because you actually have firsthand experience of all these different other industries and subcultures or whatever we want to use to label that, gives you so much more authenticity when you write about it, because you're not a person who observed it, you're a person who lived it.
I mean, great. And also that comes with, you know, I'm not spring chicken, so it's just like I've kind of seen how people have taken this stuff and how they've put it into their outfits, and then how these things go kind of, you know, secular, and or how there's a process to this, and seeing things come back around again and then going out of fashion and come back. And I found that absolutely fascinating. I mean, I really feel that there's a kind of like, there is a sort of workwear heritage brand revival, which feels a lot like the Tumblr days that you're talking about. But these kids are like late teens, early 20s, have nothing to do with that. Don't know. So that's really interesting, seeing how they interpret it, like their way, or how it's different to those glory days.
Yeah, and I say this too because of the fact that we're in this also weird time with like the democratization of social media, right? Which already was accessible, to where you have these people that all of a sudden are popping up in my feed. And I want to make sure I don't sound ageist here, but like they're popping up in my feed and they're very young adults, and that's great. But they're like reporting, I'm air quoting that word, on all these different times and eras where people are like, you know, way back in the day, you know, when Oasis was, you know, before they did their reunion tour, this is what they wore. And this is, you know, and I think that's fine. And there's a place for that. But the importance and why I love your writing so much is not only do you have a perspective on it because you lived it, but it's not so much like a report. You know what I mean? And I think there's a way of like how you've always written that, like, I feel like we're sitting next to each other versus you're a talking head. It's like, and then this happened.
That's really good, because that's what I've always tried to do that. And again, that comes from that. I think it comes from a confidence thing where you're like, well, I have a personal story about the stupid thing I got up to when I wore this piece of clothing. So it's just like, I can throw that in there. You know what I mean? I can put that in, as much as like, well, who was the first guy to wear one? Where did it come from? What zip did it have? It's just like, well, there was this one time where, you know, I got thrown out of somewhere for wearing this piece of clothing or something. It's just like, so hopefully, but and that hopefully comes from people kind of knowing you as well, so that they kind of trust in the, you know, it's like, okay, I'll give you a point. I'm not saying this for me, but this is the difference between, you go on now and you try and book a restaurant, or you read restaurant reviews. It's like, who cares what someone writes on the internet about a restaurant? Like, it makes no sense, because they're only going to write if they had the best meal of their life or the worst meal of their life. What can you gain from reading someone you don't know saying, well, the service was impeccable, and then the next one down saying, that's the worst service I've ever had? What can you possibly glean from that? Whereas if you're reading like A.A. Gill or, you know, or someone, it's just like, you know their tone. So you know that maybe you disagree with them, but you can glean something from what it is, because there's a consistency there, which you know. Yeah. So this is a problem with the kind of democratization of information. It's just like, what does it mean? Yeah. What can you get from it? Especially opinion, the democratization of opinion. Like, who fucking cares what someone else thinks about it? You know, unless you've got some benchmark to judge it from.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, because I've you know, shared this point of view before, and people are like, well, are you saying that people's opinions shouldn't matter? I'm like, no. But I think there's different weight that goes behind some of these people's opinions because of their experience. Yeah. All because of the fact that you've read them before, just their presence being a known entity. Right. Exactly. Like, well, I know how they felt about that, so therefore how they feel about this will have some meaning to me, some resonance to me. Yeah. You know? So when did you start working on this book? Because publishing lead time is crazy.
And not like a year ago, so not too bad at all. I mean, it was last winter that we kind of went over there, and then constantly since then, since handing it in, it's been like waking up in the middle of the night going, "Oh my god, why didn't I say that? Why didn't I? How did I forget about this?"
Well, that's for book 2.
Exactly.
I mean, come on, that's the whole point.
This is why I'm doing press. I want book 2, please.
Yeah, man, you gotta get all the excitement, so then it'll be around long enough for you to be like, okay, now I have this to say.
No, I think this format, this kind of like informal guide to, means that it lends itself to other things. That's sort of the reason why we collectively landed on this idea. Was just like, well, this is something that you can explore in the same format moving forward.
Yeah. Was there anything in this process that you revisited that you had a different perspective on than maybe when you initially were going to pen it down?
I think that it's all constantly happening. There's lots of things I've always wanted to say, and I'm glad I got to say them. So like maybe little stories or bits of nuggets of knowledge that someone has given me over the years, which maybe people don't know, you know. I mean, there is a lot of myth and a lot of falsehood in the history of menswear. There is a lot, because so much of it has served certain companies alleging that they're the first person to have done something, or that they have this unbroken heritage, a great thing. And so much of it is absolute, is bullshit. And then the problem is it just gets repeated. So it's quite nice to sort of actually sift through these things and go, well, okay, is it? What is that? Let's actually have a look. And so like getting to grips with some of that was fun. And it comes down to really boring things like patents. You can actually look and see who patented like a process.
Oh, right.
And then, that's not true. So there's a certain amount of that in the book. And then there's lots of things where it's just like, I have an opinion on it that might be different to other people's, but it's just like, I mean, one of them is, for example, I'm really fascinated by the term corduroy. And that's probably one of the big kind of like acorns of like one of the big ones of like menswear, is that it's corduroy, rope of the king. And it's just, it's bullshit. It's nonsense. So it's just like, okay, so then what? So how did it come? Why is it then? So those are kind of interesting things to sort of get in the weeds about. It's like being argued at in a pub by someone that you're so interested in their opinion. That's how I would liken the book to.
Yeah, it's funny too. There's a few brands which, like, I'm not here to talk shit, but like they've reached out to me and their tag was or is like, oh, we have these royal warrants, and I'm like, well, that's great, but like the product is shit now. So like, I get it that this member of, the royal court at some point deemed that they would
wanted free clothes.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. It's like I'm allowing you to give me things, and then you can use that as your marketing. So it's influencer culture, basically. It's proto-influencer culture. Of course it is. It's exactly what it is. It's like then they could use that on their things. That's true. There's been very pleasant examples of me actually finding people who underplayed the things that they've done, though, and the innovations that they've made. I'll give you an example. This is with the brand as well, but I work with a manufacturing company called Yarmo, and they have been going for 7 generations in Great Yarmouth on the east, sticking out into the North Sea, in the east of England. And they've been making oilskins since 1850s. The family is called Johnson and Sons, still owned by the Johnson family. 7 generations in, and they still have buildings in that city that they manufacture from and buy from. Wow. And it's a joy working with them because they're lovely people and they're great, and they have been doing it. So many of these companies will be very wary of a company that puts dates in their brand name, because it's often,
Ooh.
Anyway, it's often because that's the company that they've bought had that original date or something. That. There's not like an unbroken chain. So this is an example I can give you of the company who absolutely have unbrokenly been manufacturing since that date. Oilskins for sailors, and then on from there. But what they don't say is like all the other brands that they had. Woolsey underwear was them, Monument shirts, Hold Hard workwear. It's like, and they don't, it's like, Jesus, like all of these collectible old things are all manufactured from this one town, from this one family company. And like, and they're still there today, and they still sell ranges and they still manufacture from people. They manufacture for Margaret Howe, manufacture for me, manufacture for like tons of people. They're great.
Wow.
So it's just like, so that's the other thing is you discover really lovely things about people and that are really exciting, you know?
Yeah, there's a blanket company based out of like Prince Edward Island in Canada, in like northern Canada. And for the longest time, and I think maybe even still now, if you wanted anything from them, you just had to call them. And a person would answer the phone. Like they, and this is like 2023 or 4, the last time I called them, because like you try to go to their website, which is a shithole of a website. I mean, it is not a website. It's basically like text on a thing. They didn't even like get a landing page. You call them and someone's like, hello. And like, hey, I wanted to call about ordering this, these fabrics, these blankets. And they're like, what? Oh, yeah. Hold on. And you're on hold and you hear someone like in the background and they're like, yeah, this person wanted those, and it's such a great experience because you're like, oh, you're still making this stuff and you get the wool from over there and you can hear the looms, you can hear the stuff happening. Yeah. And I think people almost get turned off by the like, oh, they don't have a Shopify site.
Yeah. No, I mean, people, manufacturers who make my socks for the brand, when I first started working with them, I would still get typewritten invoices in the post. And it was like, whoa, yes, that's beautiful. Where you had the top sheet and they had the bottom sheet. And I was like,
the carbon copy.
Oh, come on. That's what we want. That's what we want.
It's true. Yeah. For the longest time, I remember and this was even at the Armory, the Alden invoices we got, the order form was handwritten. And it was when Floyd would come in, who's not with us anymore. He's not with them anymore. And he would just write out like, okay, here's your order, blah, 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 blah. Here it is. And then you'd go to JG Mellon. And like that was your night, and it was epic.
Oh my God, we are sounding like the oldest farts.
I know we do sound like
in Christendom right here. This is bizarre. But yeah, no. I'm saying like
they fucking wrote an order form with their hand, man.
Simon Crompton once said to me when I was talking about, he was like, you like things that are a bit shit, don't you? And I just thought that was perhaps the most incredible insight into like my taste level that I'd ever heard. I was like, yeah, I think I do. I
guess
right.
It's like, if shit is
I think I do.
the human error and realness.
No, but I think it was the specifics to me, sort of like it was saying like, I'm not a fan of cashmere. Like, for example, it's just like for me, it's not a product that has longevity. The way I wear clothes, the way I think it's not something for me. Whereas that kind of very scratchy sort of wool full of lanolin is something which I can get on with and enjoy and will have for 20 years, 30 years. You know what I mean? So I'm much more drawn to like working to making things for the brand like that, and also to wearing myself than I am to like the world's finest gauge cashmere, whatever.
Yeah.
So that was that was me sort of grumpily sort of, like talking to him about the difference between certain brands and my brand, So that's how he surmised it.
On your brand, what's AWMS? What's happening with that?
That's a very good question. It's I don't know. I don't know what I can do differently to what I'm doing, which is make something, collect the money directly from people for that product, and then put that into the next product. That's what I do. That's how it served me for the last 5-6 years, and I'm not sure what could possibly change from that. I'm not sure what's scalable. I'm not sure how much control I'd have to give up on certain elements or how much investment I might need to do to change that. At the moment, if I closed it down tomorrow, I wouldn't owe, I would not be in any financial misgivings. It would just be a very clean thing. And at the same time, it has allowed me to exist 5 years. So it must be okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's not growth oriented, because it is growth oriented, but it's certainly, there's no great dreams of it being anything different to what it is, because I don't know what that would look like. And it's great because it's like I literally do everything from the design to the marketing to the promotion to then the actual shipping of the products to people. So I can categorically say if someone hasn't received their order, well, that was me. I sent it on Tuesday. Here's the evidence. I don't have to worry that someone in the chain is not doing something. So and I take a better satisfaction from that, I think, than it being bigger than it is, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Having said that, it's incredibly, it's not the easiest thing. But then again, I think because I worked in music, I approach it more like everything's more like a release. So it's more like a record release than it is like a collection across a season. It's conceptualized like a collection across a season as like an idea in terms of like how it would work and what the influence is. But in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of it, it's much more like putting together a release and then releasing it and then selling it.
Yeah, I think the most fascinating thing of this stuff now is like, I mean, I work with a few brands and, the trying to be smaller or to look smaller than what you are is everybody's MO right now. Like, even in some cases where people like, yeah, maybe we pare back this experience digitally, or maybe we make this a little bit more limited. Maybe we try, and I think because now, like we were saying at the beginning, where almost everything is accessible immediately and purchasable, and you can even get it. You have some of these brands, which I think is great as long as you're not an asshole. Let's just set that aside. Not that you are. To make something really special. And I think people care much more about that and the whole experience to get it than they do about like, oh yeah, you need 800 SKUs and you should never be sold out and it should ship within 12 hours. And, it's like, ugh.
Listen, man, it's only clothes. It's not, we're not making life-saving drugs or anything like that. So it's not a big deal. But I think definitely when I started, when there was a bit more novelty to it, stuff was selling out very, very quickly. And I was really like, and I was very pleased with that. That seemed like something that was commendable to me. Like I've done it. As we move forward, people buy not quite in as much of a kind of, there's a longer tail to it. I have stuff in stock for a little bit longer, but it's still manageable. And then and then I also have things which I say, these will be restocked. I mean, I have things that are like, when they're done, they're done. Like, but that's only down to the realism of what I'm doing. It's not down to any kind of, posing or affectation. It's very much down to, I can afford to make these. I think this is how many I'm going to sell. So let's see. And then normally I'm pretty right. But okay, that was about right then. And then we'll move on to the next one.
Can we talk the beret real quick? Because I think you and maybe Ethan, but I would say you more than Ethan, single-handedly got everyone being like, I think I need a beret. I think I need to buy one.
He was definitely someone who I was wearing one at a similar time to, maybe predates me. Simone from Tie Your Tie, Florence,
Simone Riggi.
Simone Riggi. And then also Terry Ellis, the great Terry Ellis. They're the people like who for me were like the people I was seeing who were wearing them. Obviously people have worn them, but it was more like within our context and within that kind of menswear scene. And it was just like, hey, the thing for me was I used to try and the beret I make has what we call a short flight. So in other words, this distance, this headphone distance here across the top of your head is the flight of a beret. So you have two measurements on a beret. You have the actual hat size, and then you have the second measurement, which is the distance across the top. And most of the ones that you buy that look like they're worn by a kind of French poet are like 10 and a half, 11. So in other words, too big. And they kind of drape off to one side, which is a great look. And I have a couple and I kind of enjoy that. But what I was more interested in is ones I'd see, pictures from the 30s of either factory workers or like people on holiday in berets where they were wearing these tiny ones that sort of fitted their head almost like a watch cap. And I could never find them. So with AWMS, it wasn't the first thing I made, which everyone thinks it is. The first thing I made was a pair of slippers based on Paul Bowles slippers, which I found in 2 photos of him. I was just like, I need to make these, which were leopard. Well, I made them in pony hair leopard, but obviously were probably ocelot fur, Grecian slippers. And it was just like, Jesus, that's like nuclear levels of cool right there. I need to make these. So before I even really started the brand, I was like, would anyone be interested if I made these? And then and 20 or 30 people were. And I was like, okay, great. So then we're off to the races. So then the next thing was always, I think, going to be the beret. And it was a friend of mine, a guy called Leon Raymond. He also was a big beret fan. And I said, hey, I'm thinking of making these. Can I send you one and see what you think? And he was like, yeah. So he was like the first customer whoever got one, but it was like literally that was like the sample. And he was like, no, this is great, do it. And I just found an old factory in like Eastern Europe who used to make them for factory workers in the sort of communist era.
Oh wow.
And hadn't made them for a couple of decades. And we're like, yeah, okay. So like I say, I think the great thing about them is that you realize you can wear them in a way that doesn't come with all that baggage of this kind of slightly like effete or, slightly sort of romantic bohemian notion of a beret. Like they look quite sort of sturdy and quite,
Workwear.
I wouldn't say the word tough, but they certainly, but they're a work, obviously. There's a chapter on them in the book. They are a workwear piece. They were made for shepherds and then later on for workers. They are traditional workwear.
Yeah. There's a continuing discourse over the longevity of the chore coat. And I'm curious if you could weigh in on that for listeners here.
I mean, I can't, there hasn't been a time in my life where it wasn't worn by people in some form or way. So I don't see it going away. Is it because it's kind of overexposed or something? Is that the kind of idea?
Yeah, I think it's become, overexposed, which is just pretty trite anyway. But also the fact that everyone has a chore coat, and I'm like, well, yeah, everyone also has a shirt.
Yeah.
Like nobody's shitting on the blue Oxford.
Well, that's it. And also, I think it's like, does everyone when people say chore coats, I think they mean a lot of different things because it really just means a kind of a denim or a canvas coat that you wore to work in. But of course, that goes from everything from the Drake's Games jacket through to a French workwear jacket, through to a Levi's, barn coat, through to everything. So I think people will just really sort of maybe change the one they specifically wear, you know what I mean? But I don't think because really it's just, we're talking about a canvas jacket with that fits like a sack jacket that's, either has a, Revell collar or doesn't, and then has patch pockets. So that's not going anywhere.
It's true.
Is it?
No, I mean, I think that's the other thing too, is occasionally sometimes they get kind of press hitty to where it's like, oh, I can dunk on this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have a few people who are like, you know what? You're right. I need to get something new. This is my, my crutch or whatever that I'm leaning on to dress for me.
I mean, for me, there's so with my form, I'm a big guy and I'm also big shoulders and chest. That's not my area. So I have a harder time with tailored jackets than I do with like sack jackets because of the way that I'm built. So what's funny for me is like I started wearing them, and this goes back to what I was saying before about that kind of formality and informality and the kind of sort of slipstream between them. When people were doing that, when Drakes were really popularizing that kind of jeans with the sport coat with a chambray shirt and a tie, that that kind of menswear Tumblr era. My version of that was the opposite. It was a chore coat, but then with Ambrosi trousers. So it was almost like my sort of money was being spent on the bottom
half. The Neapolitan bespoke trouser maker is what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I am.
No, it's all right.
Whereas, and then the jacket was the thing that was kind of like very casual, but then with the shirt and tie. And if you look back at like sort of photos for me from that era, that's kind of like a look that I was doing. I'm definitely not saying I invented that, but I'm saying that was my take on that kind of sort of casual and formal sort of look. Was the opposite to the other way, the way most people were doing. That's because it suited me better,
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also that high low thing that everyone's still always really attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even now when I look at stuff, I'm like, I'll look at something. I'm like, okay, all this is too nice.
Yeah.
We got to have a vintage piece in here somewhere. We got to have something that feels a little bit more rugged.
You need that friction. You need a little bit of, a little bit of something rubbing up against something that doesn't quite sit right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or else you end up in that sort of 50 Shades of Beige kind of, mention the brand, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that's the thing too. It's like, because I'll talk about this stuff all the time and then someone will be like, well, this is what I wear. Like, does that mean you don't think about me or you think you look down on me? And I'm always like, what the fuck? No, it's never the case. No. It's just like, for me, the joy is always like in the journey and figuring out like everything I did wrong and everything I tried to do to get to this point, which is now why I like it so much versus a person who's like, occasionally I'll get a message and someone's like, all right, $5,000 seasonal wardrobe, go. And I'm like, what? I'm not Chat GPT, man. Like, what works for you? What's your body type? What do you like? What do you care about? Like, what do you want to tell the rest of the world versus like, I'm I have some money and
Well,
I
one thing
bought the guide.
One thing I will say is just different now, I think, between like maybe American menswear guys and British, well, not menswear guys, but people over there, people here, is that like, I think there's a lot more people maybe walking into stores in the States and being like, give me this. This is great. Like either a mannequin or like what a member of staff is wearing. And really, which I think is like, we're really throwing themselves into it and being honest and being like, I don't really know, but this looks good. I'll try this. Whereas I think guys over here think that they are a little bit better than that and think they're a little bit too cool and don't want to do that and won't want to be seen to be doing that, you know? It doesn't necessarily mean they dress any better. It's just like, it's just more that they think that they're having more input into like what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
But you wouldn't, I never in my experience if any menswear retailers in the UK has anyone ever walked in and been like, give me this, I want this mannequin that's in the window, you know, even if they do end up doing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's been my experience at many of places I've worked at where someone will come in with a picture that they saw or they look at the mannequin and they're like, this is perfect.
Yeah. Well,
there's
an honesty to that, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it probably would look good. Let's try it, you know, and then maybe from there we can see what you want, what will work for you and what needs to be changed, you know?
Yeah. So what's next for you on are you going to do a little book tour? What's happening now?
Yeah, like a mini menswear book tour. I'm going to the book comes out on November the 6th. So the launch party is at Drake's. Nice.
There you go.
On the 4th of November. So Tuesday the 4th of November at Drake's. And then fingers crossed we'll be in New York in December. Details TBC, but with some very good friends of mine in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully Pity, and then maybe Paris for that week after Pity when they're doing there. So that's
we got to sync then, because I think I'll miss Pity this year, but I will be in Paris in January.
Oh, amazing! Good. I'm going to try and do both. I haven't done Pity for a couple of years, so I want to go back, and I've got a reason to go. I kind of stopped going because I literally didn't have a reason to go anymore. I wasn't buying for anyone, and I wasn't, so it didn't seem any point. But so now it's like, yes, okay, I can feel like I can go again.
Yeah.
And then I'm out on tour with the band doing like the autumn shows. So that'll be around the same time, you know, and then just launching the new season here at AWMS. So it's not a quiet time.
Jeez.
I know.
Why'd you schedule everything so close together?
I mean, I kind of don't. It's just the way it goes, you know. You know, it's better to be busy.
That's true. That's true.
But I can rest at Christmas.
Anything else taking up your time these days that have gotten you excited, whether it's a new brand or a show or a record?
I'm very excited. In a week after I finished touring, we're going to there's a hardcore festival in Europe called Revolution Cooling, which has lots of old bands and new bands playing, and I'm going with some of Da Boys. So that's going to be my little like treat at the end of kind of everything being done. And then, like everyone else, I just saw one battle after another, and I don't know how I'm going to see a better film this year because it's incredible, absolutely incredible. Brand-wise, I'm really, I've really finally, the kind of penny has dropped on like old Massimo Osti pieces from the 80s. It's just like, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've been appreciating it for a while, but like now I'm like, okay. And I went to the exhibit. So that was probably it. I went to the Massimo Osti exhibition in Bologna where they recreated his office in actually the Bologna Town Museum. So and that was mind blowing because it was just like seeing the original like letter sets that he'd scratched the letters out for the logos, and then the actual books from military uniforms that he'd cut out the pictures from. Yeah, and then like discarded logos and everything, and that kind of minutiae is like the stuff that I get incredibly excited about. So that was probably one, that followed by lunch with, in Bologna. That was a good day.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, doesn't get any better than that.
Was it like, old CP company stuff?
Yeah, all of that. So I was Stone Island CP and Bonneville.
Oh yeah.
But what's really fascinating is I'm working on a big article on this at the moment. But what's really fascinating is that those brands kind of how they bled into each other, and they're not as clear cut as like what is sort of told. And you were seeing these things like lots of experiments that didn't really happen, or lots of things that you see ended up in other places. And then I'm just fascinated by his process. One of the things that really blew me away was there was a jacket on the table, and then there was photocopies of pockets stuck on the top. And I was like, oh my God, because being someone who doesn't use CAD and can't really draw, this is exactly how I do things.
Yeah.
It's literally like cut and paste. And I'm like, and there he was cut and pasting things. And I was like, this is amazing. So that was the one thing that really, that was the one exhibition this year. It really like blew me away.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Well, this has been a pleasure as always. No surprise.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Thank you. No, this was a pleasure. Well, congrats again. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Well, I'll see you in the next couple of months. I guarantee it.
Okay, for sure. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, man.
All right, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. You've been listening to Blammo. I am your host, Jeremy Kirkland. This show is produced by Amar Lal and myself, Blammo Media, all the crew, everyone that's there. I bet it's funny because if you're hearing this, you're like, oh my God, it's a different ending. He changed the ending. It's the same thing. Give us a follow on Instagram. You can also check us out on Patreon if you want all the unedited, not even the unedited, all the bonus stuff you want. Dye Workwear, you want the Triple J show, which is now on video. There's so much fun stuff over there. And also the incredible, amazing, wonderful, super fantastic Slack group, where even as I write this right now, I mean, folks are just showing off fits, giving good advice. It's all the fun things of the internet, minus the tomfoolery. It's all in there. But anyway, we will see you soon. We are back next week with a brand new episode. What else do you expect? We got it. All right. Laters.